once again to the Schaefer Two-Car Garage, Small Engine Shop, LLP, LLC, INC. We cover all the legal bases, and our work is guaranteed from the shop here to the end of the driveway. Today we're going to be looking at this Husqvarna 327 PT5S Polesaw, which is a very nice unit and it will extend a long ways out. We're not going to look at the power head because I've already got it running great. What we're going to look at is this saw head, which has a lot of problems and is a complete mystery as to how to take it apart. So we're going to explore that mystery. When I got this unit from the customer, the complaint was that the saw head didn't seem to be getting any oil, which is absolutely correct. This entire saw head unit here with the blade and all had about 8 pounds of dirt and sawdust crammed up in it, and the oil comes out of this rubber tube here, which is connected into the tank, and you couldn't have gotten anything out of it. It was so jammed up. So I cleaned it up, and once I got it cleaned up, I noticed that this sprocket here had some pretty severe wear in it. And I thought, well, I'm just going to try to reverse that, let the side of it that has not been driving, flip it around and let it drive, and it'll have a lot more use in it. So I disassembled it. I took the oil tank off of it, and I've put it back together now, so I'm not going to take it apart again. But looking at it and looking at the parts diagram that I got off the internet, which shows this nut here, which is right here, and it's connected to a drive shaft, which comes out in the center of the nut here, but the drive shaft does not show to have any threads on it whatsoever. So I thought, well, maybe this thing presses together. So I took this end of it off, which just pops off here, and it has a snap ring in it. The snap ring is shown right there. And I took the snap ring off, and I thought, well, maybe this thing just drives through and drive it on out, and then you can get the sprocket off of it. Well, I tapped on it some, and it did drive out a little bit, but I wasn't real comfortable tapping on this thing until I found out a little bit more about how to fool with it. So I messed with it a little bit. I chucked this in a vise and spun this thing right, spun it left, trying to get it loose, and it didn't come loose at all. So I decided, well, I'll go to the Husqvarna USA website and send them an inquiry about it, which I did. How do you disassemble this thing? Is this shaft threaded? Does it press together? Etc. Well, that was on a Friday. Monday was a holiday, so late Tuesday afternoon, Husqvarna did respond, sending me 2 more copies of the saw head parts diagram, which I already had. Didn't answer one word about how to take the thing apart. So I had to kind of go back to the drawing board. I called JDK Equipment. That's the authorized Husqvarna dealer here in Shreveport. Asked them about the unit. They were very cooperative, but said They had not worked on one of these units before. They had the same parts diagram that I had, but did not have a service manual on it. And they weren't sure how to take it apart either. And so it kind of left me in the lurch, not knowing how to continue with this thing. So after a couple of days, the guy at JDK did in fact call me back, and he said, yes, this shaft is threaded. It's a regular right-hand thread, which makes sense because the blade, the saw blade, is on the left-hand side of the shaft, as opposed to chainsaws where the blade is on the right-hand side, and they always have a left-handed thread nut holding them on. So what he said made some sense to me. And he said the Husqvarna guy that he had talked to, probably the national service manager or national product manager at Husky for Polesaws, told him that you just grab this nut with a pair of vice grips and eventually this nut will come loose. So that's exactly what I proceeded to try to do. What you do is take your vice grips, open them up pretty wide, and you can clamp on this outer washer, or if you got a good amount of wiggle room, you can clamp on both washers, but one washer will do. Clamp on it tight. These washers are directly connected to the shaft. They've got an oblong hole in them with two flats, and the two flats on both the inside and the outside washers fit on the drive shaft. So when you hold on to the washer, you're actually locking it down. And then you take your DeWalt impact driver here, put it turning counterclockwise, and pop, 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 and eventually the nut did unscrew. And I was able to switch the sprocket around. This thing, the sprocket actually drives between the two washers when the nut is tightened. There is no direct connection between the sprocket and the shaft, which to me leaves a little bit to be desired, but that's the way Husqvarna has designed it, and apparently it works okay. So I did that. I finally got it off, got the sprocket reversed, and I decided before I put it all back together I would test the oiler out. And I had the little tank full of regular 30 weight bar and chain oil, and you can drive this thing like so, sticking it in there, and that drives the sprocket and should pump oil out of this oil opening here. Well, I couldn't get it to move any oil at all. So I took all of this apart, disconnect the tank. There's 3 bolts, 1, 2, 3, that hold the tank on. Pull it off. Then you can take this rubber piece, it just pulls off, and you can see the drive shaft for the oil pump. And it's sticking out, and you just pop on it, and this whole adjustable top here, which is sealed with an O-ring, it pops out, and you can clean the entire system out, clean the tank out, make sure all the passages are open, which I did, put it back together, but I still could not get this thing to pump any oil, regular bar and chain oil. So I did finally fill it up with some much lighter fluid, a power steering fluid, a transmission fluid mix I have, and by driving it like so, I finally got oil to slobber out of the black opening right there, which you can see. So it is working. Now, I'm not sure what the temperature needs to be for it to pump 30 weight bar and chain oil. This oil has no tack additive in it, so it pumps pretty easily. But in the winter time, you can always get winter grade bar and chain oil, or take your regular 30 weight bar and chain oil and thin it down with power steering fluid or ATF, something like that that's thin, to make it pump a little better. But the unit is working. It's ready to be put back together and assembled and put it back on the Polesaw. And there's a little guard that goes in here that needs to be, just protects the oil hose here. It needs to be reinstalled. And there's a screw here that secures this oil pump in place. It needs to be put back on, but she's ready to go. And now I know how, and you know how, to change the sprocket and disassemble this unit. Thanks for watching.